The year is 1241, and the kingdom of Hungary is burning. Across the great Hungarian plain, the sky is choked with the smoke of smoldering villages, and the rivers run red with the blood of a decimated populace. The Mongol Empire, the unstoppable juggernaut that had swept across Asia and Eastern Europe, had arrived. Under the command of the brilliant strategist Subutai and Batu Khan, the Mongols annihilated the Hungarian army at the Battle of Mohi. The king fled, the countryside was ravaged, and it seemed as though the kingdom of Hungary would simply cease to exist, erased from the map like so many empires before it. The Mongols eventually withdrew, not because they were defeated, but due to internal politics, following the death of the great Khan. They left behind a wasteland, a broken society, and a trauma that etched itself into the very soul of the nation. But they also left behind a lesson. For 40 years, the people of Hungary lived with one eye turned nervously toward the east. They knew the Golden Horde was not gone. They were merely waiting. The Mongols viewed Hungary not as a sovereign nation, but as a rebellious province that had yet to be fully broken. The question was not if they would return, but when. And when that day finally came in the winter of 1285, the Golden Horde expected a repeat of the slaughter of 1241. They expected a terrified populace, a disorganized nobility, and wooden fortresses that would burn like dry tinder. They brought with them a force of terrifii, magnitude, led by Nogai Khan and Talabuga, intending to finish the job their grandfathers had started. But the Hungary they found in 1285 was not the Hungary of the past. In the intervening decades, a transformation had taken place, a radical restructuring of military doctrine and infrastructure that produced a secret weapon so effective it would not only halt the invasion but shatter the myth of Mongol invincibility. To understand how this miracle occurred, we must look into the mind of King Bela IV, the monarch who had barely escaped with his life during the first invasion. When he returned to his ruined kingdom in 1242, he was a man possessed by a singular vision of survival. He realized that the traditional Hungarian way of war, which relied on light cavalry and open field engagement, was suicidal against the disciplined, mobile, and numerically superior Mongol forces. He also realized that the old defensive structures of Hungary were obsolete. The traditional fortifications were earthworks and wooden palisades, designed to fend off local rivals or smaller raiding parties. Against the Mongol siege engineers, who brought with them Chinese gunpowder and Persian catapult technology, wood and mud were meaningless. Bela IV initiated a massive kingdom-wide project that would fundamentally alter the landscape of Central Europe. He began the era of the Great Stone Castles. This was the secret weapon in its embryonic form. It was not a single device, but a comprehensive system of defense rooted in geology and masonry. The king famously declared that he would give royal land to any noble who agreed to build a stone fortification on top of it. This policy sparked a construction boom unlike anything the region had ever seen. Within a few decades, the strategic hilltops, mountain passes, and river crossings of Hungary were crowned with formidable stone fortresses. These were not the sprawling, romantic palaces of the Renaissance, but grim, utilitarian machines of war. They featured thick walls, narrow arrow slits, and deep cisterns to withstand prolonged sieges. But the stone was only half of the equation. A castle is only as good as the men who hold it. Bela and his successors reorganized the social hierarchy to support a new class of warrior. They encouraged the development of Western-style heavy cavalry, knights encased in plate and mail, riding heavy destrey, airs that could smash through the light leather armor of the Mongol horse archers. By the time King Ladislaus IV, known as Ladislaus the Cuman, sat on the throne in 1285, the secret weapon was fully operational. It was a defense in depth, a network of stone islands in a sea of hostile terrain, supported by a mobile armored strike force. The winter of 1285 brought the test that everyone had fear. The Golden Horde launched a two-pronged invasion. Nogai Khan, a seasoned and ruthless commander who had been a kingmaker in the Mongol politics of the steppes, led a massive force through Transylvania. His co-commander, Talabuga, struck through the northern Carpathian passes. The scale of the invasion force is a matter of historical debate, but it is clear that it numbered in the tens of thousands. And a swarm intended to overwhelm the defenders through sheer weight of numbers. They moved with the speed and aggression that were the hallmarks of Mongol warfare, expecting to sweep into the Pannonian basin, forage for supplies, and burn everything in their path. However, as Talabuga's forces descended through the snowy passes of the northern Carpathians, they immediately noticed something. In 1241, the villages had been open, the people vulnerable. Now the countryside was eerily empty. The peasants had not fled in a panic. They had retreated in an orderly fashion into the stone fortresses that now loomed over the valleys. The food stores, the livestock, and the fodder that the Mongol army depended on for their horses were gone, secured behind thick limestone walls. As the first layer of the Hungarian strategy, denial. The Mongols were masters of logistics, but their system relied on living off the land. By denying them easy plunder, the Hungarians forced the invaders to consume their own limited supplies. Talabuga's army pushed forward, looking for a fight, looking for a city to sack. But every strategic point was blocked by a castle. When the Mongols approached these fortifications, they found themselves in a tactical nightmare. They could not simply bypass them, for the garrisons inside would sally out and cut their supply lines, but they also could not easily take them. The Mongol siege engines, which had been so effective against the mud walls of Chinese and Persian cities, were difficult to transport through the snowy, mountainous terrain of Carpathians. Moreover, the new Hungarian castles were often situated on high, rocky crags, making the use of battering rams and mining tunnels nearly impossible. The Mongols found themselves standing at the foot of sheer cliffs, staring up at stone walls that bristled with crossbowmen. The psychological impact was immense. The hunters had become the hunted, forced to camp in the freezing cold upchu. The defenders watched them from warm, well-stocked keeps. As Talabuga's forces struggled in the north, Nogai Khan was having an equally frustrating time in Transylvania. He managed to raid some unfortified market towns, but the great prizes, the centers of administration and wealth, remained just out of reach, locked behind gates of iron and oak. The local voivodes and the Sikli border gwar, fierce warriors in their own right, used the terrain to their advantage. They ambushed foraging parties, blocked narrow mountain roads with felled trees, and bled the Mongol army with 1,000 small cuts. The turning point of the invasion came when the Mongols attempted to push toward the heart of the kingdom, toward the city of Pest. In 1241, Pest had been sacked and its population slaughtered. In 1285, the story was different. Queen Elizabeth, the mother of the king, organized a desperate and spirited defense. But the decisive action happened in the field. King Ladislaus IV, despite his turbulent relationship with his own nobility and the church, proved to be a capable wartime leader. He did not make the mistake of his grandfather by offering a single winner-take-all battle on ground where the Mongols could maneuver. Instead, the Hungarian heavy cavalry utilized a strategy of harassment and counter-punching. When the Mongols spread out to forage, the armored knights would descend, their heavy lances and swords crushing the lighter Mongol weaponry. The Mongols, whose bows were less effective in the damp, freezing winter conditions, found that their arrows often glanced dead off the Western-style plate armor adopted by the Hungarian elite. The secret weapon was now revealing its full lethality. The stone castles acted as anvils, holding the invaders in place, while the heavy cavalry acted as the hammer. As weeks turned into months, the situation for the Golden Horde became catastrophic. The winter of 1285 was harsh, even by the standards of the region. Disease began to spread through the Mongol camps. The horses, the lifeblood of the Mongol army, began to die of starvation. There was no grass beneath the deep snow, and the granaries of the peasants were locked away in the castles. The invaders were freezing, starving, and constantly under attack from an enemy they could not pin down. Talabuga's army in particular faced a nightmare scenario, having led to take the key fortifications in the north, and finding the road to the capital blocked by a mobilized and confident Hungarian army. He ordered a retreat. But a retreat in the face of a hostile winter and an aggressive enemy is the most dangerous maneuver in warfare. As the Mongols turned back toward the Carpathian passes, the Hungarian light cavalry and the local peasantry, who had emerged, fought the safety of the castles. fell upon them. The retreat became a rout. The narrow passes, which the Mongols had crossed with such confidence months earlier, became death traps. The Hungarians ambushed them from the tree lines, rolling boulders down the slopes and raining arrows upon the disorganized columns. The secret weapon of the castle network meant that there was no safe route home. Every valley was watched, every choke point was gua. DDD. Talabuga's force effectively disintegrated. Historical chronicles from the time describe the remnants of his army wandering the wilderness, eating their own dogs and horses, and dying in the thousands from exposure and hunger. It is said that Talabuga returned to the Golden Horde with only a fraction of his men, humiliated and broken. Nogai Khan fared little better. While he managed to preserve more of his army than Talabuga, his campaign was a strategic failure. He was forced to withdraw, pursued by the Transylvanian forces and the royal army. The aura of terror that had surrounded the Mongols for half a century was shattered. They had been beaten not by luck, but by a superior system of defense and a society that had adapted specifically to defeat them. The destruction of the Mongol war machine in 1285 is a pivotal, yet often overlooked, moment in European history. Had Hungary fallen a second time, the road to Vienna and the rest of Western Europe would have been wide open. The Golden Horde was still at the height of its power, and there was no other military force in the region capable of standing against them. The stone castles of Hungary acted as the shield of Christendom, absorbing a blow that could have shattered the medieval world. This victory vindicated the reforms of Bela IV. It proved that the feudal system, for all its flaws, could be engineered to provide a robust national defense. The investment in stone masonry was validated in the most brutal way possible. The castles did not just protect the soldiers, they preserved the economy and the food supply, stripping the Mongols of their ability to wage war. It was a victory of logistics and engineering as much as it was a victory of arms. The aftermath of the invasion shifted the balance of power in Eastern Europe. The Golden Horde remained a threat, but they never again attempted a full-scale conquest of Hungary. They realized that the cost of invasion was too high, the soft target of the steppe. Pez had become a fortress of stone and iron. The psychological impact on the Hungarians was equally profound. The trauma of 1241 was not erased, but it was healed by the knowledge that they could defend their homes. The narrative changed from one of victimhood to one of resilience. We must also consider the evolution of military technology that this conflict highlighted. The clash between the Mongol light cavalry and the Hungarian heavy knight was a collision of two different worlds. Two different philosophies of war. The Mongols relied on speed, mobility, and terror. The Hungarians, adapting Western European styles, relied on shock, armor, and fortification. In the dense forests and rugged terrain of the Carpathians, combined with the strategic depth provided by the castles, the Western model proved superior. The Mongol bow, fearsome on the open steppes of Asia, lost its decisive edge against stone walls and plate armor in the cramping confines of Central Europe. Furthermore, the leadership of the Hungarian crown during this period deserves recognition for its foresight. It is rare in history for a nation to learn from a catastrophe so effectively that they completely nullify the threat upon its return. Usually, nations prepare for the last war, only to be surprised by the next. Hungary prepared for the last war, but they did so with such thoroughness and understanding of their enemies' capabilities that their preparations held true. They understood that the Mongols were a force of movement, and so they built a static defense that denied movement. They understood the Mongols needed to forage, so they built a storage system that denied resources. The landscape of Hungary today is still dotted with the ruins of these fortifications. Some are mere piles of rubble, reclaimed by the forests. Others have been rebuilt and modified over the centuries. But in 1285, these were the state-of-the-art technology that saved a civilization. When we look at the ruins of castles like Visegrad or the border fortresses of Transylvania, we are looking at the secret weapon. They are silent monuments to a desperate innovation. They are the physical manifestation of a kingdom's refusal to die. The failure of the 1285 invasion also had repercussions within the Mongol Empire. The Golden Horde was plagued by internal strife, and the disastrous campaign weakened the prestige of its leaders. Nogai Khan's influence began to wane, and the myth of the horde's divine mandate to rule the world suffered a critical blow. A heavily armored Hungarian knight standing atop a stone battlement had proven that the sky was not falling, that the storm could be weathered. In the end, the destruction of the Mongol war machine in 1285 was a triumph of adaptation. It demonstrated that while a secret weapon can be a new technology, it can also be a new way of thinking. It was the shift from wood to stone, from open fields to closed defenses, and from fear to preparation. The Mongols brought fire and death, expecting to find a victim. Instead, they found a wall. And against that wall, the wave of the Golden Horde broke, receded, and ultimately dissolved, leaving Hungary standing amidst the snow, scarred but unconquered. The lesson etched in stone by King Bela IV had saved his people, and in doing so, altered the course of history.